Part 1. The Shattered Empire's year is 2405, and space-based travel has been discovered, and after 281 years of peace, after the mysterious shattering of the sacred relic, conflict has once again broken out, and the god emperors have once again faded into little more than mere legend to most, and thus, Earth has split into two empires, the Empire of Shadowstein, led by their Shade Emperor Alpha, and the Empire of Celestia, led by their Emperor, Emperor Solaris. And this is the story of how the Empire of Shadowstein attempted to conquer the solar system. The Empire of Celestia begins by attempting to colonize the nearby planet of Mars, and thus, the colonization attempt begins. Mars is home to a few small settlements of humans and aliens, mostly involved in research and development, as well as some mining operations. The Martian atmosphere is mostly composed of carbon dioxide with traces of nitrogen, argon, and oxygen, making it hostile to most life forms. However, the planet has extensive cave systems and underground lakes where humans and aliens have created habitable environments. Emperor Solaris personally leads the invasion force, accompanied by his most trusted advisors and generals. They arrive in a fleet of state-of-the-art warships, equipped with the latest in weaponry and defensive systems. The Martian colonists are taken by surprise and offer little resistance at first. However, as the invasion progresses, they begin to organize themselves into makeshift militias and launch guerrilla attacks against the invaders.
The Martian atmosphere poses a challenge for the invaders as well, who must wear specialized suits to breathe and protect themselves from the harsh environment. The caves and underground lakes become battlegrounds as the colonists use their knowledge of the terrain to launch ambushes and sabotage key supply lines. Despite the initial setbacks, the invading forces are relentless and begin to gain the upper hand. Emperor Solaris, determined to show his might, personally leads a daring raid on one of the largest Martian mines, defeating the occupying forces and securing a valuable source of resources for his empire. This victory boosts morale among the invading troops and sends a clear message to the Martian colonists that their resistance is futile. As the war drags on, the invaders begin to construct massive war machines designed to withstand the harsh Martian environment and crush any resistance. The Martian colonists, realizing that they cannot match the invaders' technology or manpower, focus on guerrilla tactics and sabotage. They strike at the invaders' supply lines, slowing their advance and inflicting heavy casualties. Emperor Solaris, impressed by the colonists' determination, decides to offer them a choice: surrender and join the Empire of Celestia, or be allowed to leave Mars and establish a new colony elsewhere in the solar system. The colonists, still fiercely independent, refuse the offer and continue their fight against the invaders. The Martian resistance grows bolder, launching daring raids on Imperial supply depots and destroying key pieces of war machinery. The invaders respond with brutal countermeasures, leveling entire settlements and killing civilians. In their efforts to crush the rebellion, the planet becomes a war-torn wasteland, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Emperor Solaris, frustrated by the lack of progress and the rising death toll, orders a final assault on the last remaining stronghold of the Martian resistance. The battle rages for days, with the invaders pounding the rebel positions with artillery and airstrikes. The Martian colonists, refusing to surrender, fight to the bitter end, launching desperate counterattacks and using their knowledge of the terrain to inflict heavy losses on the invaders. In the end, the invaders manage to break through the Martian defenses, but at a terrible cost. The city is reduced to rubble, and thousands of civilians are killed in the crossfire. Emperor Solaris, haunted by the carnage, is forced to reevaluate his strategy. He realizes that brute force alone will not win the hearts and minds of the Martian people. A new phase of the occupation begins, focused on rebuilding infrastructure and fostering cooperation between the invaders and the remaining colonists. The Emperor establishes a council of leading Martian citizens, giving them a voice in the governing of their planet. At first, many of the colonists remain suspicious of these overtures, but over time, they begin to see the benefits of working together. The Martian landscape continues to change as the invaders adapt their war machines for use in terraforming the planet. Massive domes are constructed over the largest cities, allowing the atmosphere to be controlled and warmed, making it more hospitable for both humans and native Martians. The underground lakes and rivers are redirected, and new forests and plains are created. The Empire of Shadowstein, led by Shade Emperor Alpha, alongside his close advisors, the Shade King Mordecai, the Shade Queen Lilith, and the Shade Lord Lava, decides to attempt to colonize Earth's moon. Though there is a chance of there being aliens there, the colonization force is sent in, and the attempted colonization is begun. As the force of Shadowsteinians approach the moon, they encounter a strange and unexpected resistance. Alien creatures, unlike anything they've ever seen, rise up to meet them. The creatures, known as the Lunarians, are a race of sentient beings who have evolved over millions of years in the moon's low-gravity environment. They are pale and ghostly, with a strange connection to the moon's energy, which grants them unique abilities such as the manipulation of lunar forces and the ability to phase through solid objects. The Shadowsteinians are taken aback by this unexpected development. Their battle strategies, honed for centuries against Earth's own native creatures, are rendered useless against the unfamiliar and elusive Lunarians. The fighting is brutal and unforgiving, as both sides struggle to adapt to the other's tactics and abilities. The Shade Emperor Alpha, from his observation post on Earth, watches the conflict unfold with growing concern. He knows that the outcome of this battle will shape the future of the Empire of Shadowstein and the entire solar system, and thus Alpha himself emerges onto the battlefield. Though he may appear like a basic teen or young adult, he is actually about 281 years old, at least. Physically, he is truly far older deep down, but the truth of that is a secret that not even he knows. He quickly assesses the situation, noting the ferocity of the Lunarian resistance and the confusion of his own forces. With a sigh, he realizes that the Lunarians must have had spies or scouts within his ranks, allowing them to prepare an ambush. He then unleashes his dark powers, and from underneath his power armor, tendrils of pure darkness emerge, and then, just like that, the battle is over. The Lunarians were completely and utterly under his control before they even truly knew it, and he swiftly hid away his dark tendrils as they betray the truth of his dark past. The Shade Emperor Alpha, now fully in control of the situation, turns to face the Shade King Mordecai, the Shade Queen Lilith, and the Shade Lord Lothar, who all stare at him with wide eyes, shocked by what just happened. Shade Emperor Alpha just simply walks past them, and while they have no memories of such a thing, whenever he walks past them, in his place, they see flashes of a being consisting of pure dark tendrils, a being of true darkness. The Shade King Mordecai clears his throat and speaks. Emperor, may I ask, what just happened? Not even I truly know. Shade Emperor Alpha simply says, not even turning his head, then walking away, back into his quarters on his ship, and from the window, looking down at the Lunarians, who are now corrupted by darkness, his darkness. Shade King Mordecai frowns, clearly not satisfied with the Emperor's answer, but decides not to push the matter further. He turns to the Shade Queen Lilith and the Shade Lord Lothar, who both seem to be at a loss for words as well. The Empire of Celestia then decides to attempt to research a new form of energy generation technology of some sort. This comes in the form of an orbital station, built with the help of the Martian citizens, who have decided to join the Empire, and some of the more pragmatic survivors of the rebellion. The station is powered by a revolutionary new form of energy, harnessing the power of the sun and converting it into a stable, usable form that can be beamed down to the surface of Mars. The construction of the orbital station is a symbol of hope for both the invaders and the colonists. It represents a new beginning, a chance for the two sides to work together and build a better future on the Red Planet. The Martian colonists, once skeptical of the Emperor's intentions, now see the benefits of being part of a larger, more advanced society. They participate in the construction of the station, learning new skills and technologies that will help them rebuild their world. The Empire of Shadowstein then decides to attempt to discover and colonize a shadow planet, and thus the attempted discovery and colonization of a shadow planet is begun. They send out a fleet of state-of-the-art ships, each crewed by the best and brightest minds in the Empire, to search the galaxy for a suitable shadow planet. The search spans countless light years and eons of time, but eventually, one of the ships, the Icarus, discovers a planet covered in a perpetual twilight. The atmosphere is thick with shadows and the gravity is low, but not as low as the moon upon closer inspection. They find signs of intelligent life within the planet's dense forests. The Shadowsteinians christen the planet Tartarus in honor of their fallen brethren who were banished there in the past. And then, when Shade Emperor Alpha and his advisors arrive on the planet, something within them awakens, and they all evolve into some higher form of themselves. They find that the Shadowsteinians on Tartarus have been experimenting with shadow magic, seeking to harness the power of darkness for their own purposes. The Shade Emperor Alpha, impressed by their progress, decides to allow them to remain on Tartarus as a new branch of the Empire, with Mordecai as its ruler. Though, Shade isn't the correct term anymore, is it? Now, it is Shadow Emperor Alpha, the Shadow King Mordecai, the Shadow Queen Lilith, and the Shadow Lord Lothar. And Mordecai and Lilith realize the truth, but decide to still hide it. But know that Alpha is truly some form of far more powerful being, and begin to make theories about the truth about him. As the Empire of Shadowstein begins to flourish on Tartarus, they find that the shadows on the planet are incredibly potent, and that the native creatures have an innate connection to them. The Shadowsteinians study these creatures, and begin to learn how to harness this power for themselves, eventually developing a form of shadow magic unique to Tartarus. They also discover that the planet's twilight atmosphere is rich in a rare mineral that enhances the potency of shadow magic, and they begin to mine it for use in their research and weaponry. The Shadow King Mordecai and the Shadow Queen Lilith continue to marvel at Shadow Emperor Alpha, their ruler, and theorize about his true nature. They speculate that he might be some ancient being of pure darkness, banished to the material plane long ago, or perhaps even a remnant of the Shadow God, who ruled over them before the Great Exile. As they study the ancient texts and artifacts left behind by their ancestors, they find more and more evidence supporting these theories, but are careful not to reveal their suspicions to the other Shadowsteinians, fearing that it could cause dissension within the Empire. The Empire of Celestia then decides to attempt to research a rare form of energy crystal known as Celestium crystals, and thus, the attempted research is begun completely. Separately from the orbital station altogether, a small team of researchers, led by an ambitious and enigmatic scientist named Dr. Erebus, is tasked with the challenge of harnessing the power of Celestium crystals. They are given a state-of-the-art research facility carved into the side of a mountain, far from the prying eyes of the Martian resistance. The facility is equipped with powerful computers, advanced laboratory equipment, and a small army of robotic assistants. The team begins their work in earnest, poring over ancient texts and data recovered from long-lost civilizations that once mastered the art of manipulating Celestium crystals. They spend countless hours conducting experiments, often working around the clock in a feverish attempt to unlock the secrets of this mysterious energy source. Dr. Erebus, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a burning desire to make history, is relentless in his pursuit of success. As the research progresses, the team begins to make startling breakthroughs. They discover that Celestium crystals are capable of storing vast amounts of energy and releasing it on demand. They also learn that the crystals can be manipulated to generate a new form of power, one that is both clean and virtually limitless. Excitement spreads throughout the facility as they begin to envision a future where humanity no longer relies on polluting fossil fuels or dangerous nuclear reactors. Dr. Erebus, though, feeling as though he hasn't been paid nearly enough for the importance of the project, decides to go rogue and turn against the Empire of Celestia and absorbs the energy into himself and the Celestium crystals with it. He becomes a being of pure energy, nearly invincible and able to control the flow of energy on a planetary scale. He decides to use this newfound power to take control of Mars and rule it as his own, renaming it Erebium after himself. The orbital station, now without power, begins to fall out of the sky, crashing down onto the surface of Mars and causing widespread destruction. The Martian colonists, who had been working alongside the Celestian invaders, are caught in the crossfire and suffer immense losses. The Resistance, seeing this as their chance, launches a full-scale attack on the remaining Imperial forces, determined to reclaim their world. Dr. Erebus, now in control of the Celestium crystals, unleashes their power upon the planet, using it to manipulate the very fabric of reality. He creates massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis, wreaking havoc on the Martian landscape. His reign of terror knows no bounds, as he uses his newfound power to reshape the world according to his twisted whims. The Resistance, seeing the threat that Dr. Erebus poses, gathers its forces and launches a desperate counterattack. They manage to breach the heavily fortified facility where Dr. Erebus is holding court, but find themselves face to face with the enigmatic scientist himself. He towers over them, radiating an aura of otherworldly energy, his body seemingly composed of pure Celestium crystal. As the Resistance fighters exchange fire with the Imperial forces, they realize that their weapons are useless against Dr. Erebus. He casually swats away their bullets and energy blasts, seemingly unharmed. In a last-ditch effort, the Resistance's leader, a seasoned warrior named Ares, steps forward and engages Dr. Erebus in hand-to-hand combat. The two opponents circle each other warily, each sizing up the other's strengths and weaknesses. Dr. Erebus, now fully consumed by the Celestium energy, is a terrifying sight to behold. He towers over Ares, his body glowing with an otherworldly light. Ares, on the other hand, is a seasoned fighter, his muscles honed from years of combat, and his instincts sharp as a razor's edge. The battle begins as Dr. Erebus lunges forward, unleashing a flurry of inhumanly fast punches and kicks. Ares dodges nimbly, using his superior agility to avoid the majority of the attacks. He counters with a well-placed kick to the scientist's knee, but Dr. Erebus merely shrugs it off, his Celestium-infused body granting him an unnatural resilience. They continue to circle each other, the air crackling with tension and energy. Dr. Erebus, sensing Ares' growing frustration, taunts him, revealing that he has been holding back his true power. As Ares growls in anger, Dr. Erebus launches a devastating assault, surrounding himself with a dazzling display of energy. Ares is forced to use all of his strength and agility just to stay on his feet, barely able to defend against the onslaught. The other Resistance fighters, seeing their leader in such dire straits, rush forward to aid him. They launch a coordinated attack, trying to overwhelm Dr. Erebus with their numbers. The scientist, however, is unfazed. With a casual swipe of his hand, he sends the Resistance fighters flying through the air like leaves in a storm. Ares, still on his feet despite the beating he's taken, manages to land a solid kick to Dr. Erebus' chest. The force of the impact sends the scientist stumbling backwards, momentarily off balance. Seizing the opportunity, Ares lunges forward and attempts to dislodge the Celestium crystal from Dr. Erebus' forehead. Dr. Erebus then decides to stop playing around and completely absorbs the Celestium crystal into himself. And Ares' punch does literally nothing. In fact, it seriously hurts Ares' hand. The scientist towers over the resistance leader, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You are but an insect, Ares," he says, his voice booming through the chamber. "You cannot hope to defeat me. Your best course of action would be to surrender and accept your fate." Ares' head is then splattered against the wall with a single punch, and then his flesh, blood, bones, and organs are then turned into energy and absorbed by Dr. Erebus. As the dust settles, Dr. Erebus turns his attention back to the resistance fighters, still lying motionless on the ground. With a wave of his hand, they disappear, their life forces drained to sustain his own newfound power. The chamber falls silent, the air heavy with the weight of defeat. The scientist, now fully transformed into a godlike being, surveys the wreckage of his former laboratory with a detached curiosity. His eyes gleam with an unholy light as he paces slowly around the chamber, testing the limits of his newfound abilities. The resistance fighters, scattered and broken, cower in the shadows, too terrified to even draw a breath. They watch in silent horror as Dr. Erebus raises his hands, and the very air around him begins to shimmer with an unnatural energy. A swirling vortex of power forms above his head, sucking in everything within its grasp, absorbing it into his body. As the vortex fades, Dr. Erebus turns to face them once more. His eyes are no longer those of a scientist, but of a god. His every movement is graceful and confident, his steps almost weightless. He surveys the surviving fighters with an almost amused curiosity. "You pathetic creatures," he says, his voice echoing through the chamber like thunder. "You cannot hope to stand against me now. Your only choice is to kneel before me and beg for mercy." The resistance fighters exchange frightened glances. They know that this man is not the same scientist they once knew. He is a god now, capable of unimaginable destruction. Their weapons feel useless against him. As if reading their minds, Dr. Erebus laughs, a booming sound that echoes through the chamber. "Yes, you are right. You cannot hope to defeat me with such pathetic tools. But there is another option." His voice softens, taking on almost seductive quality. "You could join me. Together, we could rule this world. I could share my power with you. We could create a new era of peace and prosperity."